Hello and welcome to our show. My name is João Fernandes, founder and CEO of DocDigitizer, and I will be your host for today's episode of Automation Notes. Brought to you by DocDigitizer, the Automation Notes podcast is a collection of new and inspiring insights about intelligent automation. We will share and discuss with our guests the most recent trends, success stories, promising projects in intelligent automation. Today we have as our guest Ali from OpenBots. So Ali, thank you very much for being on the show. It's really a pleasure because our recent guests have been probably some of your customers, some of your partners. So it's the first time we have a vendor on the show. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Hi, Joel. Very nice to be on the show. Very nice to be part of this discussion with your audience. And sounds like you have the right brains in the industry that were on this program ahead of me. So would love to be part of it.
Fantastic. Can you share with our audience who you are and what you do at OpenBots?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Ali Chaudhry. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at OpenBots. OpenBots is the world's first enterprise-grade RPA platform with zero bot licensing. So we've essentially developed a product that's at feature parity, if not better in many ways than UiPath, Blue Prism, Automation Anywhere. But we've reinvented the business model to eliminate per bot licensing to allow companies to scale much more significantly in terms of the number of automations. And so we simply charge for orchestration, just a much more scalable, streamlined model that allows folks to realize the vision of RPA, right? Automate all of the manual workflow in your organization without thinking about bot capacity, without thinking about cost.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to differentiation against UiPath, Blue Prism, and Automation Anywhere, besides the licensing model, what would be the most the differences that you would highlight to our audience?
So I would say that we have made a lot of enhancements from the developer's perspective, right? We've come from a background of developing on the big three platforms. And so our team actually knew some of the kinks and issues with that made it tough for developers. And so we've smoothed out a lot of those pieces. So I think developers love it. And then in addition to that, from the business standpoint, it is more about enablement. Because you have no licensing, what it allows companies or partners to do. So beyond corporate users, we have partners who are implementation firms or software firms. They can build very custom businesses on top of OpenBots. So we view it as an operating system for automation. As a partner, you can build your own managed service business, brand it, and sell it how you want. If you're a software company who wants to eliminate the layers between you and the customer, you can build a layer of automation solutions on top of your software that solve for their manual work, and then turn on a new revenue stream by selling that bot directly to your end customer. So I would say it's more developer friendly. And second, from a business standpoint, it's the operating system which allows folks to create businesses on top of ours to then really have a better relationship with their end customer.
Amazing. I've been researching a little bit about your website, and I found this zero bot licensing term, which I found very interesting. So maybe this is somehow strange when compared to the other vendors' approach to licensing. You already mentioned some of the differences, but what are really the main advantage for a partner, for a customer, when it comes to this zero bot licensing?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. Actually, we get on some calls and we'll talk about zero bot licensing, and a couple of minutes in the conversation, but wait, if I have 50 bots or 100 bots, it's still the same, right? So the question, it's very hard actually for some folks to wrap their head around it, because I think the market's been programmed to really think about everything on a per bot basis, right? So the big three companies that came out before us, they were the first movers in the market. They were able to, price the product how they wanted. But we like to actually reverse the question and just ask a simple thing. If you're going to go in and develop an automation, does it make sense for you to pay rent on that automation, the work that you built forever? Not really, right? So we took a very different approach. license the software, and when you put in that effort to build and automate, all the benefits go back to you, right? So it doesn't really make sense to have a perpetual rent on a bot that you created, right? You shouldn't have to think about, how many bots am I bringing on? How do I, maximize my utilization before I get another one? Let's take all of that noise out of the equation. And so in some ways that is strange for the market, right? But we do stranger things here at OpenBots.
Yes, and I must share with you that we've been working also with a lot of RPA partners. Some of them are already selling OpenBots, and it's in fact very surprising because they know that you guys have a huge advantage when it comes to SMEs and when it comes to deploying this in specific contexts. So they just jump right into OpenBots. They don't really put UiPath or Blue Prism as an option, exactly because of the licensing model and because they know that for those customers that they are targeting, this kind of approach is much more suitable and easy to sell. So I must say that although it's strange, I start to see people really loving it and trying to push this into the market. But being RPA such a new space, do you see a lot of companies and customers changing their vendors, their RPA vendors? What and if yes, what kind of support do you provide to these customers that want to move from UiPath or Blue Prism or Automation Anywhere to OpenBots?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So we see a couple of different flavors, right? There's the companies who were the early adopters. They built, larger automation programs, like some of them are, 100, 200, 500,000 bots in production. They're not going to overnight change their system, right? But if you think about it from their perspective, they do have a huge pipeline of future automations, and they're looking to double the size of their program. And the total cost of ownership has really started to balloon. So as they look forward, they're thinking, okay, we know we want to do automations, but the ROI is dwindling and the cost is ballooning, right? They go together. So what can we do about this, right? And so when they hear about OpenBots, they leverage it as a multi-vendor strategy. So they'll bring us in alongside their existing system and then build their future pipeline automations on OpenBots without having to really jack up their licensing expense. So now they have two platforms, one for scaling and one for the existing automations. And then as they gain confidence in the system, the licenses of the first platform come due for renewal. And then they can use our Ninja migration tool to actually transfer the code from the old system to new system and generate better ROI. So there's the multi-vendor approach for the folks who have been doing it for years, right? Because you're right, you can't spend. If I told my organization that we have to use this platform and they just invested, millions in it, I'm going to look a little foolish if I have to unwind that decision, right? So I've got to be very careful and cautious. And so multi-vendor strategies are the way that I think people are solving for the scalability. And then
let me just add that is a pretty nice way of mitigating risks. And once your center of excellence or RPA strategy starts to become more mature, multi-vendor is the way to go, because at some point you also want to taste different flavors, probably different features, different business models. So yeah. But please continue.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up a good point on the platform risk, right? We're actually seeing that very heavily with one of the big three who recently got acquired by. They almost went to a private equity firm, but ended up in the hands of a hedge fund administrator. And I think their customers are looking heavily to diversify the platform risk, right? So they're bringing OpenBots in alongside because they're worried about how much innovation and R&D is going to go into the core RPA product, right, for the other vendor. And so I think it's basically diversifying their platform portfolio. So I think you're spot on there. The other profile is, we have, if you look at the reports from Gartner and Forrester, they're projecting, you see the graphs, right? They're all going upward and to the right in terms of RPA spend. But when you talk to them and they peel back the onion and say, what is underlying this growth? Half of that growth is coming from existing users who are going to grow their programs. But the other big piece of this is coming from all these new vendors that are just now starting their automation journey, right? So just like with any industry, enterprise leads the way. Then the middle markets look up and say, wait, the enterprise customers are doing this, they're utilizing this technology, let's try to get access. In the beginning, they're usually priced out because the existing vendors are selling to enterprise. And then along comes the commoditization, curve where now the technology is readily available. So we've made it, we're looking to democratize access to a technology that we feel has reached a commoditization stage. And so that's a huge wave of new entrants that are coming in. I mean, we've had companies, I would say one of the largest food companies in the world, I won't name it, but they sell bananas, pineapples, right? All the good stuff. You know the name of the company. They're starting their automation journey, and they looked at all the different platforms on the market, and they ultimately chose OpenBots as the sole vendor because they realized the platform was almost identical in outcomes, but this allowed them to take that limited, the finite budget that they have and split it up into many different areas, right? There was the platform, but then they could also hire developers, invest in training, invest in other tools. So I would say for the second stage adopters, OpenBots is becoming the sole vendor of choice, right? Because the option didn't exist 5 years ago, but now it's there.
Exactly. You mentioned something that surprised me. Ninja migration something? Can you really drill down on that? Because it's, first of all, very good name. But can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's actually, I would have to say our product development team actually came up with the name. They, it was hilarious. They'd come in dressed as ninjas on Friday as they worked on this thing. But the Ninja tool is essentially, when we first went to market and we were talking to the Fortune 1000 companies, they immediately understood the zero bot license value prop. But then their next question was, wait, do you have a tool that lets me migrate this, my existing bots over? And so we heard that question over and over again. And so our team went to work to create a tool that would migrate RPA bots from existing vendors directly to OpenBots. So it transfers the code and then maps it to the components in OpenBots. And so what it effectively does is it reduces the time and effort of a manual migration by about 80%. So if you took a bot and let's say it was taking 10 hours to manually rewrite it, you could do it in 2 hours, including the testing, right? So it transfers the code, then there's a small developer check and some testing, and then you're good, right? So what that allows companies, larger companies to do is if you have a program with 50 bots, 100 bots, the cost of migrating that could be pretty substantial, right? The Automation Anywhere customers actually just went through this wave. They were forced to switch from their on-prem version to the cloud. And so they actually had to rewrite these bots. So I think there were a lot of folks who were just struggling and saying, wait, let's see what else is out there, right? And so this is where you could take the time and effort of maybe, $1 million worth of development time and effort and take that down to 150, 200,000, right? So one-time cost, you move it over, and then forever in perpetuity, you're turning off that licensing, right? So that can be reinvested back into other initiatives. So it's really more of a one-time investment in migration. Ninja reduces that cost. It reduces the time and effort. And then the result is perpetual savings on licensing.
Fantastic. That really helps this multi-vendor approach because it smooths things up and it's really interesting. Although I must say that the name is really, really, really good.
So they nailed it on the name. Yep.
So OpenBots, it's I would say a pioneer in intelligent automation space, which is a term that nowadays everybody uses. But the intelligent automation is a complete ecosystem or of several building blocks, let's say, on top of RPA. So it's way beyond rule-based robots. It starts to become more and more complex. What are, in your opinion, the most relevant building blocks when it comes to intelligent automation and that are driving also your adoption?
Yeah, so I think that that's a very relevant question because, the conferences that I've been attending in the automation space lately, the conversation is around exactly this, right? It's no longer just about process automation. It's about the entire intelligent automation journey. And so if you break that down into its pieces, the core is really the document understanding, right? Which is what DocDigitizer does.
Yeah.
That's the first level. Like all of this is basically different tools in the basket of achieving business efficiency, right? And so, or process efficiency. And so if you start with the document understanding piece, that's usually the first layer, which is you have all this, PDFs, documents coming in, whether you're an insurance company or a hospital system, and somebody has to extract the data, then classify the data, right? You've got tools that can create like machine learning and AI on top of that to make the model smarter. So as you push more examples through there, the extraction and classification gets smarter, right? So this is where I think DocDigitizer really kind of shines, because you not only have the intelligent document processing, but there's also the hardest part, which is that human in the loop piece, right? It's very rare. Like we hear from customers all the time. They're like, wait, we love your RPA product, but we need to know more about your document understanding. Can you solve this? And a lot of times customers have this issue where they just can't get that human in the loop piece, right? And they don't have, I guess, the experience kind of stitching together the team. I think that's where your team is really kind of shines, is you guys have been able to connect the dots, not only on the technology, but also how you then package that with human in the loop to deliver a result that just makes it very easy for bots to consume, right? So I would say the document understanding is clearly the first layer of business process efficiency gains. From there, the data becomes ready for the bots to consume. It's extracted, it's classified. Now the bots can easily go in and say, let me grab this, let me grab that, and start doing my job, right? And then from there, for the bots to get smarter, I think that's where we're seeing a lot of pressure at corporate automation programs to bring in intelligent automation, right? Which is taking data and using it to kind of make your model smarter. And so machine learning, NLP, they're all kind of getting layered into this stack, from the document piece to the robotic process, the process automation, to the data analysis. These pieces are all now coming together to make the automation smoother, faster, more seamless, right? Initially, they were very rules-based and a little bit clunky. We're trying to move away from rules-based to say, where do we get smarter? How do we train this entire process to get smarter on this, this component and that component? So I think that's what's happening in the market right now. There's a lot of pressure to really kind of solve the full intelligent automation puzzle, not just one piece.
And that brings me to another question. So when we looked at RPA and citizen development programs, so this no-code, low-code approach, making things very simple to do, to develop. But when you start to plug this complex and cognitive pieces along the way, is RPA becoming more simple or complex?
So in some ways, it's becoming simpler in the sense that people are moving towards low code, right? So for developers, it's getting easier to do the basic work, but then you need the data scientists and some of the analysis folks to come up with the machine learning models that need to get plugged in. So in some ways, it's gotten easier, right? Like, for example, we have over 500, 600 pre-built commands in our system, which makes it easy for developers to kind of drag, drop, get a head start on building core automations. So now their development time is compressed, but now, like to your point, they have to now consider, okay, how do we make the intelligent document processing piece, the machine learning, where do we build that in? So the time that you're freeing up from one area, you now are, focused on kind of implementing new components to make the whole thing better, right? And so in the same way that you've kind of, seen efficiency gains on one side, but now you have to kind of account for a new, the brain component of automation, the same thing is happening with budgets too, right? It's no longer just about budgeting for RPA. You have pressure to go incorporate all of this machine learning. So I think that's kind of where we fit into the stack as well. We are basically saying, okay, if you could reduce your bot rentals by 80%, you could use that 80%, move it over here, and invest in your machine learning, invest in your NLP, and then close out the whole, portfolio. So same, whether it's time, developer time, or budget, it's basically what it's doing is it's expanding to do more. If you're not expanding to get more yield out of your team's time or your company's budget, you're actually falling behind, right? And so I think that's what a lot of operators need to, are some of them have, I think, started to realize this, is that it's not just okay to sit on status quo. If you want to fund and get a good yield out of new investments, you got to take things out of the old basket where there's opportunities, right? And reallocate the portfolio of automation budget.
Exactly. And when these companies are moving from this RPA, simple projects, simple rule-based processes, when they move into this broader intelligent automation programs, what do you think are the most common pitfalls? Because it must be something new for them, so there must be a lot of pitfalls.
Yeah, I think the pitfalls are, you need a lot of expertise, right? So it's, you can be an expert in document understanding. Maybe you're an expert in process automation. Maybe you're an expert in, machine learning models. It's very rare that any company has all three, right? And so I think that's where people, everyone wants to move in that direction, but your team may not be trained or at the point where they're very fluid in all three of those. And so one area is going to suffer. And I think that's where the partner, the implementation or consulting companies really come in, because they provide that area of expertise. So the biggest thing, I think, whether it's personally or professionally, if you understand your own strengths and weaknesses, and then you plug your weaknesses with very capable, talent, that's how you really get to the next level. And so I think companies need to take a hard look and say, okay, I know we want to do all this, but do we have the right capability in-house? And if not, then maybe we can plug in a gap with some external partner or third-party consulting company to get us to the next level. And so I think it is challenging. And the folks that will try to do it all themselves, some may have the capabilities and they get there, but a lot of them may not have the core strengths to execute on all these pieces, right? And so being honest with yourself in terms of your team composition and your, area of expertise, I think that's how you plug the weaknesses and move to the next level.
Fantastic insight. I would say that being very certain about your maturity level in terms of automation, it's key, because then the steps that you need to take to get to where you are looking to go. So I see a lot that there starts to be very different maturities when it comes to companies and automation. So that also must raise a lot of challenges for vendors to cope with these very different customer profiles, customer maturity, offer them different journeys. So when you mentioned Gartner and all the research about the demand for automation growing and becoming more a commodity and entering the SMB market, what do you think is just driving such a growth? Because we are in recession, everything is really not that good, I would say. So why is automation growing that much?
So I would actually attribute that. I mean, it was growing even before COVID, but from speaking to a lot of CIOs, what we found out is that COVID was a bigger motivator than any internal pitch a CIO could give to their management for digital transformation. Right? There were a lot of folks who looked at it as, okay, it's a nice to have. Now, post-COVID, it's a must-have, right? Because you had this situation where the workforce couldn't come into the office, and now there's labor shortages all over the place, right? And skilled labor, unskilled labor, just shortages across the board. And so companies are realizing that we're moving into a digital age. We need to properly blend our workforce for the future, which is a combination of people for the subjective stuff, and then automation for the more mundane, repetitive, rules-based piece. And so I think what's finally happened is that there is like across the board buy-in from companies up and down the size range that realize we have to move towards this future of work scenario. And if we don't do it, it's no longer a nice to have. We're going to fall behind our competition. And so I think that's really driving a lot of that change, because even though there is, economic headwinds, right? We're at the back end of a very long, like it's one of the longest bull markets in history, right? So it was bound to cool off. We're seeing the signs. And there is going to be a lot of pain in terms of the, economy and the tightening cycle. But this is in every cycle, whether you're going up or down, some industry or some piece is doing really well at that time, right? And I think as we go down here, businesses are positioning themselves to get in place for a recession, right? There's companies who are like, forced to lay off a number of people across, different groups and organizations. We've had clients who were a little bit ahead of the curve. They were realizing that things are going to tighten. So what they did is they kind of positioned the mundane, repetitive work with the automation, and they used their people to give them a better overall like work experience to kind of move up the value chain. And now with this, they've already compressed their costs, so they don't have to lay off the same workforce, right? They just didn't overhire. They had leveraged automation to kind of get more out of their existing team. So I think it's going to be a puzzle that moves up and down. And the key is going to be getting the right blend of people to automation in place so that your people are happy, motivated, and want to stay with your firm, as opposed to being kind of bored and burnt out doing the repetitive stuff, right? So if you get that blend right, through this recession, we're still going to see growth, especially in the automation space.
Exactly. Our most recent guest, he shared that automation is giving back time to business, which I think is a very nice way to put things. So yeah, and that time now more than ever translates into money, into the survival of the business itself. So giving time back to business is critical more than ever. So looking to the future, where do you see intelligent automation 5 years from now? I know that this is a very hard question, but still.
5 years from now, I think we're going to see massive growth in the demand for data scientists, right? People who understand how to take the data and then, apply the algorithms to then feed into machine learning and AI. So I think that every company is going to almost have there's going to be a massive, just like we saw CMOs become much more data driven and their budgets were almost now meshed with technology, right? Because marketing is now mostly tech. We're going to see the same thing with, intelligent automation. You're going to see a lot of data science type of work, teams that are built in-house, right? That are then feeding into these programs. I think we're also going to see the proliferation of platforms that make AI as a service, right? So they've got, the expertise on how to analyze data. So we're going to see a whole new slate of tools that make AI much more usable for the average organization. So you don't have to go build your own. So it's kind of exciting where things are going. We're going to, there's going to be a lot of innovation there, but it's clear that, data is really the new oil, right? And every company, the better you're able to utilize your in-house data, the more effective you're going to be. You're going to have an edge in terms of how do you sell to your customers, giving them exactly what they want based on historical patterns. You're going to have an edge on your competition. So I think there's going to be a little bit of an arms race to kind of get, the AI engine in place, which ultimately will feed into and kind of enhance the underlying business process automation work as well. But I think that's where we're going, right? It's an arms race for data analysis and AI.
Which I think is very connected to the future of work and having this robot workforce side by side with your human workforce. Probably the HR departments will some of them will start to take care of some of the robots. So it would be an exciting change for the culture and for the workforce itself. I always like to ask our guests for suggestions on books, podcasts, or persons to follow, so our audience can know more about and learn more about intelligent automation. What are your suggestions?
So there's a one that I read recently. It's called AI Superpowers, and it basically was talking about the state of AI in the West, in the U.S. versus China, for example, right? And so there is a little bit of a race, even from a geopolitical standpoint, to see who can crack the AI code. And what's interesting is, the U.S. has always had the more entrepreneurial spirit, right? The capitalism's been a driver of creation of business and ideas and scaling up. But then they also looked at, the view from the Chinese perspective. AI is basically leveraging big data, right? And in the US, it's very segregated because the data is residing at all these different companies that are controlled by that corporation. Whereas if you look at China, there's a lot of state control. And so when you have state control, you actually have access to data across multiple different large corporations, right? Imagine Google, Facebook, Amazon, all being under one umbrella, and the state can kind of leverage that infrastructure, and their AI could be a little bit more powerful because the data set is bigger, right? So it was just a really interesting glimpse into, how countries are, kind of chasing and kind of positioning themselves to win this AI race. Two very different models. But, it was fascinating to read. So I would encourage your readers to, maybe get the book or, if they drive a lot, pick up the audiobook. It's a very fascinating read.
Amazing suggestion. I must say that I already read that book, so I also recommend it. It's a fantastic book. So what is next for you and OpenBots, and how can your audience reach out to you and to OpenBots after hearing this episode?
Yeah, I think what's next for us is we are just we are delivering to the market what it's been demanding in terms of scalable automation. And so we have seen lots of growth at the enterprise segment and massive growth on the mid-market segment, the new entrants. So I think for us, it's just about, executing on our original plan of scalable, automation. We're going to stick very close to the core to make sure we're best in class and delivering the most scalable solution. And the customers are coming, right? The product is speaking for itself. We're seeing massive adoption. So I think we just have to do lots more of that type of execution. And in terms of getting a hold of us, our website is openbots.ai. You can go there and learn a lot about OpenBots. You can also reach me directly. It's Ali, A-L-I, Apple Lima Igloo, at openbots.ai. So Ali at openbots.ai. But we'd be happy to chat with anyone and kind of see where they are. But I did want to say, Xiao, that we have actually seen a lot of customers kind of facing the issue with the document understanding piece. And I think what you guys are doing at DocDigitizer is solving that pain point that everyone struggles with, right? How do you get more accuracy, but kind of a better end result in the data? And I think with your human in the loop integration, it is it's in a box delivered to the client with the same the highest accuracy. So I think it's your tool is going to facilitate a lot of what we do, which is on the process automation side. So I think it's great to see what you're doing.
Ali, thank you very much, and it was really a pleasure to have you on this episode, and seeing and hearing about how you guys are democratizing the access to automation. A lot of very interesting topics, licensing, the Ninja migration stuff, all the insights that you gave about the future of this space. So thank you again for taking the time to being on our show and chatting with me.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Always nice catching up.
Fantastic. So before we close, and this is like the standard way of closing our episodes, if you are looking into intelligent document processing, as you heard, is a huge trend right now, and aiming to parse through a wide range of unstructured content, documents, emails, and get back the data that you need to undertake your processes and to automate your process, go and visit docdigitizer.com. Find out how you can deploy all-inclusive IDP platform that bundles machine learning, AI with human in the loop to provide you out of the box 100% accuracy over any document, any layout. with the very fast deployment. So we are talking about 6 times faster than traditional IDP tools. So really pushing for this and most of all remove all the hurdles of implementing IDP. So if you are hearing this episode and if you are part of our community, you can use Automation Notes 10 coupon to get 10% off to any DocDigital subscription, and to stay up to date with the latest intelligent automation trends, success stories, promising projects such as OpenBots. Make sure you like and subscribe Automation Notes on DocDigitizer social networks. We are releasing a new episode every 2 weeks, so stay tuned. Amazing guests, amazing episodes, amazing insights. I have been your host, João Fernandes, and this has been Automation Notes. See you next time.